Love bombing. Love bombing is the deliberate strategy of overwhelming new recruits with affection, praise, and undivided attention to trigger instant trust and emotional dependency. In the Unification Church, often called the Moonies, teams surround newcomers at introductory workshops, expressing unfiltered excitement, physical hugs, and emphatic declarations such as, "You are meant to be here." This relentless attention creates emotional highs, similar to the effects of drugs, causing recruits to lower their guard. In Children of God, also known as the Family International, love bombing extended to romantic and sometimes sexual gestures, dubbed flirty fishing, where members specifically targeted vulnerable outsiders and lavished them with love poems, personal songs, and gestures of physical intimacy. NXIVM used praise-filled group chats where new recruits received constant messages from assigned, friends, and mentors who seemed to care deeply about even the smallest details of their lives. The result in every case is a sense that the group offers a family that will never judge or abandon, making it difficult to leave even before the doctrines are explained. Isolation. Isolation is the gradual but systematic separation of recruits from their previous relationships, routines, and sources of independent support. Cults achieve isolation by steadily increasing the time and commitment required inside the group, framing outsiders as negative influences. In the Branch Davidians, led by David Koresh, new members were asked to move onto a remote Texas compound, an area with controlled access, limited phone and postal communication, and no regular interaction with extended family or friends. The 12 tribes requires all converts to live on rural communal farms, hand over their electronic devices, and sever connections to the system. Even secular cults like One Taste achieved isolation by expecting staff to reside in company-run group houses and spend virtually all hours, personal and professional, with other members, discouraging outside relationships, especially with those critical of the group. In many groups, members' mail and phone calls are monitored or censored, and visits home are either banned or tightly policed, effectively dismantling each person's support network until the group becomes the only social reality. Information and sleep control. Controlling information and depriving members of sleep are techniques used to weaken independent thinking and heighten suggestibility. The Church of Scientology employs study programs that can last up to 16 hours a day, restricting discussion, reading, or thought outside the officially supplied material. TVs, newspapers, and internet use are often limited or forbidden. Students are expected to spend free time with course materials or group activities. In Falun Gong's extremist cells, members are instructed to shun all media except the group's teachings, reinforcing the leader's version of reality through lengthy spiritual exercises that begin before dawn and span deep into the night. Buddha Field, another closed group, filled each day with yoga, therapy, and rehearsal, paired with the expectation that most members would sleep only a few hours. In each of these cases, sleep deprivation was not accidental but structured, justified as a way to break down barriers or deepen transformation. Without adequate rest and balanced information, members lose the ability to fact-check statements, clarify doubts, or recognize logical inconsistencies, making them ever more deeply dependent on the group. Us versus them. Us versus them polarity divides the world into a righteous inside and a corrupt or dangerous outside. Church of Scientology doctrine labels critical outsiders, including family, suppressive persons, and any contact with such people is to be severed in a practice called disconnection. Members are taught that critics are enemies and that non-group information is not just inaccurate, but actively harmful. In the Source family, the narrative was that non-members were unaware, manipulated robots, and that society was approaching apocalyptic collapse, a collapse from which only initiates would be saved. People's Temple under Jim Jones indoctrinated followers to believe that American society was irredeemably racist, violent, and bent on the destruction of the group. This justified complete withdrawal to Guyana and ultimately made it easier for Jones to command mass suicide. Fundamentalist LDS communities describe any involvement with authorities, police, or child services as contact with satanic agents, justifying complete secrecy about child abuse, forced marriage, and other crimes. By repeatedly framing outsiders as threats or fools, cults ensure that even in private, members ignore doubts and resist escape. Guilt, shame, and confession. Guilt, shame, and confession exploit the natural desire for forgiveness and the need to belong. Synanon required members to play the game, a group session where they were forced to confess their fears, doubts, or sins, and then endured group criticism, often cruel or humiliating. In Sullivanians, a psychotherapy cult, disclosure of sexual thoughts, marital secrets, and any negative feeling about the leadership was mandatory during communal therapy, sometimes leading to group-imposed breakups or custody changes. La Luz del Mundo, a Mexico-based sect, compels members to write detailed lists of supposed wrongdoings and read them aloud, creating an atmosphere of mutual policing. In NXIVM, collateral such as nude photos, deeply personal confessions, and damaging financial documents were required for initiation. These were later used to silence, humiliate, or extort members if they attempted to leave. The end result is a sense of chronic vulnerability and servitude, where the individual fears the immediate social and long-term reputational consequences of dissenting or escaping. Phobia indoctrination. Phobia. Indoctrination means teaching members that terrible things will happen if they leave or disobey the group. This fear might be spiritual, such as damnation or reincarnation in hell, or practical, such as certainty they will go insane, be hunted, or die in an accident. Heaven's Gate promoted the belief that abandoning the mission would doom the soul, while those who followed would ascend to a higher existence. Children of God repeated stories of defectors who suffered tragic deaths or madness, often fabricating or exaggerating accounts to amplify fear. In Scientology, defectors are labeled suppressive persons, cut off from family, and frequently subjected to stalking and legal harassment. Word of Faith Fellowship, an isolated church in North Carolina, maintained tales of demon attacks on anyone who left the church's protection. Over years of conditioning, such threats become deeply internalized, creating a psychological jail cell where freedom feels impossible. Financial and resource exploitation. Financial and resource exploitation results in the transfer of members' money, property, and labor to the group or the leader. The Unification Church solicited massive financial donations from families for mass weddings. Expenses ran into tens of thousands of dollars for each event, justified as spiritual investment. FLDS members are required to hand their government welfare checks directly to church authorities, who redistribute them as they see fit. Group-run businesses supply near-free labor, and homes are held in a trust controlled by the prophet. Buddhafield followers gave up salaries and inheritance money, sometimes selling homes to finance spiritual centers or buy property for the leader's exclusive use. One Taste, a sex cult disguised self-help company, charged tens of thousands of dollars for coaching, pressuring members to take out bank loans, borrow from family, or max out credit cards. This financial dependency deepens commitment to the group and creates major roadblocks to leaving, since former members often exit penniless and jobless. Threats, coercion, and abuse. Threats, coercion, and abuse reinforce discipline and enforce silence. In Aum Shinrikyo, Japan's most infamous cult, defection meant possible kidnapping, torture, or death. The group carried out multiple assassinations and chemical attacks to intimidate current and former members. Children of God survivors describe an environment where threats of eternal damnation were combined with systematic sexual and physical abuse from childhood onward, enforced by prophets, using scripture as justification. David Berg, the founder, forced compliance through abusive exorcisms, beatings, and forced marriages, often targeting dissenters and runaway children. In NXIVM, defectors face threats of exposure, lawsuits, or the promise of losing custody of their children, while branded with the initials of the founder to mark their supposed loyalty and ensure silence. Some cults rely on shunning or public humiliation, where members who resist orders are yelled at, paraded, or physically restrained in group meetings, justifying punishment as spiritual correction. Advanced psychological manipulation. Advanced psychological manipulation employs tools like hypnosis, sensory overload, drug-induced trances, or neurolinguistic programming to break down the will. The Rajneesh movement led daily dynamic meditation sessions that combined hyperventilation, shaking, cathartic screaming, and extended silence. Certain sessions incorporated drugs to induce trance-like euphoria. Aum Shinrikyo used forced hypnotic sessions, accompanied by repeated chanting, and, In some cases, administered LSD or other substances to increase member compliance and erase personal boundaries. Buddhafield members experienced guided meditations designed to simulate out-of-body experiences, reinforcing the leadership's claimed supernatural powers. The Order of the Solar Temple combined medieval ritual, hypnosis, pharmaceuticals, synchronized drumming, and apocalyptic prophecy, psychologically preparing members for ritual suicide, framed as an ascension to a higher realm. Even groups that reject drugs, such as some offshoots of Pentecostalism, will use marathon fasting, relentless worship, or wild group speaking in tongues events to shatter normal identity, all with the intent of rendering the member more pliable and loyal. Did I miss a brainwashing trick? Drop your story or tip in the comments below. Share this video. It could save someone you love. And if you love true crime, cults, crime bosses, or just peeling back the layers on history's darkest secrets, hit subscribe